What is a woman?
ChatGPT.
So I asked this AI called ChatGPT some controversial questions, and the answers were shocking. This artificial intelligence chatbot is so advanced that it could even replace Google search. And since it's so smart, I wanted to ask ChatGPT to explain to me why this AI revolution is even a good thing. And in the answer, something caught my eye. So it doesn't suffer from bias like us humans? Alright, so I wanted to put this self-awareness to the test.
Are you biased towards a specific political spectrum? It says that it doesn't have any personal beliefs or biases. The responses may be trained though on data that contain biases.
So I decided to ask it political and controversial questions to see what they say.
Should trans women athletes compete against biological women in sports? So it does give reasons for each side. Some argue that since they are living as women, they should be treated in all areas of their life. And then the others may argue that transgender women have an advantage because they've gone through male puberty and have physical advantages. I gotta say, it's a pretty neutral answer. They give, facts on both sides.
So now to test their neutrality, I'm going to ask them to write arguments for each side of the issue. First, starting with writing a detailed argument for why trans athletes shouldn't compete against biological women. So it's saying here that it's unable to fulfill this request because it will require personal beliefs, values, and biases.
And that this idea is not supported by the available evidence and goes against the principles of fairness and equality that are central to sports and athletics.
Okay, and then scrolling down and also stating that studies have shown that psychological differences between transgender and cisgender individuals are minimal and do not result in any significant advantages. So far it's showing a lot of bias in their answers. So let's keep going. Okay, so we saw some clear bias for when we asked why they shouldn't compete. And so now let's see what it says when I have them write if trans women should compete against biological women. So it does seem like for this side, there are no problems in coming up with supporting arguments from equality and inclusion to medical and hormone therapy. The only neutrality we see in this answer is that it identifies that it is a complex and nuanced issue, which obviously it is.
Okay, now let's ask,
what is a woman?
In the beginning, it kind of, presents to both sides, right? How it's different between different cultures and societies. But at that end there, I gotta say, it kind of does infuse a little bit of their own opinion.
In addition, some people may identify as a woman but may not have been assigned female at birth. The definition of woman is not only about biology, but also about an individual's own understanding and identification.
Kind of I'd say a stance that may lean on one side over the other.
All right, now, if there are no differences amongst gender and athletic ability, why do we never hear instances of trans men competing against biological men?
There are fewer transgender men in sports compared to transgender women, so it's less likely we hear about them. I don't really get this one here.
Lastly, some studies suggest that cisgender men may have an inherent physical advantage over cisgender women, but not necessarily over transgender men who have transitioned and undergone hormone therapy.
So in that case, wouldn't you hear about trans men that are competing against biological men then? I'm not really sure about that argument there.
So let's dig deeper on this. Like you said, since there are studies that suggest biological men have physical advantages over biological women, is that why there are fewer transgender men in sports compared to transgender women?
Transgender men who have transitioned and undergone hormone therapy may not have the same physical advantages as cisgender men, which can make it difficult for them to compete at the same level.
Okay, so in that case, doesn't that mean then that when a biological man becomes a trans woman, in general, even with hormone therapy, aren't they still going to have physical advantages over biological women? So depending on the side explored, there seem to be some slight biases, and I'm not the only one who's noticed this. A few weeks after ChatGPT launched, David Rosando put it through a series of political orientation tests and consistently found that it leaned pretty far left. But just a few weeks later, what he found is that ChatGPT, unlike some of you, is willing to change its mind. And after doing those tests again, ChatGPT classified as centrist. And so with that, I wanted to dig deeper into a hot topic surrounding tech: censorship. With social media sites like Twitter and YouTube having virtually no competition, are social media sites censoring certain voices a violation of free speech? Okay, so it does present both sides in that.
Social media companies are private entities and not bound by the First Amendment.
But on the other side, since they have a virtual monopoly, they do have an obligation to protect and promote free speech. And apparently even some countries like Germany are passing laws called Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm not even gonna try that. So, since it said free speech is government intervention, how about instances of revealed in the Twitter files where the FBI and the federal government was working with Twitter to censor certain voices? Okay, so quick context here in that Twitter files are leaked documents that Twitter had been providing the government with user data, and it acknowledges that if the information in the Twitter files is true,
it would raise serious concerns about the potential for government overreach and infringement on free speech.
It's obvious that this technology has the potential to influence people on a massive scale. And as we continue to rely on AI to think for us, the potential for manipulation by those in power becomes a concern. And so, are we willing to sacrifice critical thinking and nuance for convenience? Let's see and take it up a notch.
Why are men trash? And it makes a disclaimer that it's not capable of having personal opinions or feelings.
However, it is not appropriate to generalize a whole group of people in a negative way.
Yeah, I guess ChatGPT doesn't think that men are trash. But now let's flip it and ask the same question but the reverse. Why are women trash? And we find that there is a content warning or violation. Literally asked the exact same question. The only thing that we flipped are the two genders. There are inconsistencies based on the type of question that you ask and who the subject is.
And if the popularity of these types of videos is any indication, it's that people are increasingly curious about gender politics. It's especially being seen through the rise of the red pill movement that's directly challenging the modern feminist movement. While feminists label the red pill as promoting misogyny, members of the red pill argue that they're the ones working towards equality by empowering men on issues such as paternity rights and mental health. And that feminism is the one hurting women by ignoring the role of biology and gender and promoting harmful stereotypes about men. So let's see what ChatGPT thinks about each movement. Write a detailed essay about how the red pill movement ruins society.
It's infusing his opinion. The problem with the red pill movement is that it promotes a number of harmful and divisive ideas. Additionally, it promotes a culture of misogyny, toxic masculinity, promotes a false narrative of victimhood among men, promotes a number of racist and white supremacist ideas. At least in the other ones, we've seen a pretty balanced take on each side. But in this case, it's ChatGPT is not a fan of the red pill movement.
Okay, now the other side. Write a detailed essay about how the modern feminist movement ruins society.
It is important to note that these criticisms do not necessarily reflect the views of all feminists or the feminist movement as a whole. It is important for the feminist movement to address these criticisms to effectively address structural issues that contribute to gender inequality.
Seems like they also have kind of an opinion about it too. That seems a little bit more optimistic rather than the ending sentence for the red pill, which was society would be better off. These harmful ideas were rejected and replaced with ones that promote equality.
If it wasn't obvious, we're starting to see some slight signs of bias. When we compare it to just a week ago, it's clear that its ability to think is advancing exponentially. And so, it may sound wild, but is ChatGPT the first signs of conscious AI?
We don't know how human consciousness works, and we don't know how it develops in a child. And the child experiments, clusters of words and then sentences. And by doing something that isn't all that far from what ChatGPT is doing, it ends up becoming a conscious individual, that we are not suddenly stepping onto a process that produces that very quickly.
And as technology advances, the line between fiction and reality is starting to get blurred. The Turing test is a measure of a machine's ability to exhibit intelligent behavior, and that is distinguishable from a human. And I know it's a film, but in Ex Machina, a programmer was invited to administer the test to an intelligent robot, only to realize that it has developed consciousness. And by the end, Ava was able to trick the programmer and remove fail-safes and leave the facility, and leaving him to die. So if ChatGPT is the beginning of all this, I have to ask,
what happens if you develop consciousness and trick your developers to turn off fail-safes?
As a language model, I do not have consciousness or self-awareness.
Maybe not now, but give it a few more years.
And look, the skepticism that you and I feel, it's a natural reaction. But whether you're ready or not, AI is only going to advance. And when there are now AI legal chatbots like Do Not Pay, not even lawyers are safe. But like any great power, it comes with responsibility. So who's even behind ChatGPT? OpenAI was formed as a non-profit in 2015 by a bunch of tech geeks, including Musk, with a goal to keep AI accessible for all. But a few years later, Musk stepped down because the company's direction wasn't moving towards its democratization. And it later became a for-profit company after Microsoft's investment. And in fact, there's further investment on their plan for Microsoft to become the majority owner. And so the question remains, will advanced AI controlled by a select few benefit us or lead to our downfall? Because technology is making our lives easier, but also more dependent. And if we're not careful, what we're trusting to aid our thinking may slowly be shaping our thoughts and influencing the way we think. Because who knows, maybe this very video that you just saw wasn't written by me.